Yeshua likened his return to the days of Noah. Now, was he just referring to how the attitude of the people would be in the end times? Or could there be more to it? Let's find out. Hey, this is Off the Cuff, and I'm Steve from TorahFamily.org. I recently watched our third edition to this teaching to, once again, jog my memory to what I believed on the topic. As I mentioned before, that's not too uncommon for me to do. As I watched it, I found myself saying many times, "Oh, I forgot about that. Again." In this fourth edition, I have many new elements to add. Plus, I'll be simplifying other elements. Now, if you're familiar with Bible prophecy, you may want to put this teaching at 1.5 or 2x speed. Okay, let's get started. As seen here, Yeshua likened his return to the time of Noah. We know this is talking about the attitude and the awareness in the people of the world. However, we believe there really could be more to it than just that. Most all translations of Genesis has the flood taking place on the 17th day of the second month. And they put the day Noah and his family came out of the ark on the 27th day of the month. So, according to modern translations, they were in the ark for a year and 10 days. Many of you know there are reasons to not always trust the Hebrew Masoretic text, though. There have been errors found within it. Someone made a brilliant video regarding this. We placed their video at the bottom of our daily devotion pages on our website at TorahFamily.org. It's a 12-minute video titled, "How Long Were the Israelites in Egypt?" If you haven't seen it, please consider watching it. Scroll to the bottom of one of our daily devotions and watch it today. Trust me, it's worth the 12-minute investment. The Hebrew Masoretic text in Genesis 7:11, and think of the 7-Eleven convenience stores to best remember that verse. It says the flood came on the 17th day of the second month. That's because all modern translations used the Hebrew Masoretic text. But the Hebrew Masoretic text is not the original Hebrew. It's a copy that was made in the 10th century after Yeshua. However, the Greek Septuagint of the Scriptures was made 250 years before Yeshua. Thus, the Greek Septuagint predates the Masoretic text and even existed in the days of Yeshua and when the New Testament was being written. So, many New Testament believers would have read from it. Most of the New Testament quotes from it. Genesis 7:11 in the Septuagint shows the flood happening on the 27th day, not the 17th day of the second month. Then, one full year later, we see them coming out of the ark on the 27th day of the month. 1 full year in the ark. Now, I'm not going into it here, but many of you know we have several teachings that discuss how the tribulation is cut short to 1 year or even less. There are several plausible scenarios in how it could actually play out, and these teachings can help with that understanding. The winter timeline, declaring the end from the beginning, the 1-year tribulation, second Passover, and the coming storm, part 1 and 2, and the hour of trial. Something we can't forget is Isaiah 46:10. It says, "I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come." Though history is definitely cyclical, it's not always identical. So we may see elements of what's taken place in the past happen in the future. Some may be exact, others may be similar, but possibly not detailed in the same way. Yeshua said things would be cut short. This alone tells us there will be some things that simply parallel in likeness, but not in the exact way or timing. So, though Isaiah 46:10 shows the end is revealed from what has already happened, it may not come in a complete mirror image. Since Yeshua likened his return to the flood, let's consider some elements to what happened at the flood. The waters covered the earth for 150 days, 5 months. Then it took 7 months to completely dry. So at the flood, we see what happened at the start and how it dried up to get to the end. What happens in the end times? The creatures from the abyss are released for 5 months. The Antichrist rules from Jerusalem, which ends with the Battle of Armageddon. Then, according to Ezekiel 39, it takes 7 months to clean up the dead bodies after the Battle of Armageddon. So, just as the flood took 7 months to dry before they came out of the ark, we see the land being cleaned from the dead bodies from Armageddon, a parallel to the flood in the end times. What many may not realize is that if you go 7 months from the end of Sukkot, the day that I can see the Battle of Armageddon taking place, you land at the season of second Passover. This will be after the sun, moon, and stars are all shaken back into their proper positions as shown here in Matthew 24:29. Thus, the calendar will be reset to its perfect 360-day cycle for the millennium. Since everyone will be cleaning dead bodies from the land, they will be unclean for first Passover. Plus, you have the survivors of the tribulation on the second Exodus to the land at that time too. Thus, the 2 reasons for the second Passover. Ironically enough, we see in the Septuagint Jeremiah recording how Yahweh will bring all of his people together for Passover. Jeremiah 38 in the Septuagint is virtually the same to Jeremiah 31 in most modern translations of the Bible. You can see how they match verse to verse. This is seen even in verses 31 through 34, where the new covenant is discussed. However, the Septuagint gives an indication of timing in verse 8 compared to verse 8 in most all modern translations. The Septuagint has verse 8 show the timing of Passover as to when this event takes place. However, the previous verse, verse 7, shows who this will be. It'll be the remnant of Israel, the survivors of the tribulation. This will be those who come back to the land via the second Exodus, as noted in the last part of Isaiah 66. You can see our teaching, the second Exodus, for more on that. A point I want to bring out in this is how at the Battle of Armageddon, we're told the heavenly bodies will be shaken as seen here in Matthew 24:29. I sincerely believe this will be the beginning of the restoration of all things, as seen here in Acts 3:21. This includes the restoring of the calendar. It will return to the perfect 360 days for the sun, 360 degrees in a circle, in perfect alignment with the moon that will have 12 perfect 30-day months. This was the celestial alignment before King Hezekiah. This is covered in our teaching, the calendar. When this happens, the moon will begin realigning with the sun. This begins on the day of Armageddon. This is why Zechariah says it will be a unique day without daytime or nighttime. And the context shows it's discussing the day of the Battle of Armageddon. The point is, on this day, the celestial bodies are either completely reset to its perfect cycle on that day, or the calendar restoration begins coming back into alignment on that day. Thus, 7 months from Sukkot on the restored calendar will always take us to the second Passover time frame. Again, showing the end times could line up to the pattern at the time of the flood, pointing to the 27th day of the second month, the day the flood started and the day Noah and his family got off the ark. We'll come back to this later. In referring to Yeshua's words regarding Noah, many like to quote Matthew 24, verse 36, which says, "No one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so will it be at the coming of the Son of Man. After reading this, many then say, well, there it is, plain and clear. No one will know when Yeshua will return. This is the interpretation that's been passed down through traditional church fathers over the centuries. And sadly, it's an understanding many still hold to this day. However, Yeshua himself said in Revelation that only certain people wouldn't know when he comes, showing us that we can know the day of his coming. He won't come as a thief to his faithful followers, as noted in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 4. Since that's the case, what do we do with this belief that has teachers saying no one knows about that day or hour because of Matthew 24, verse 36? Actually, it's rather easy. Read the verse before it. Matthew 24, verse 35. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. And no one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Now we have harmony with Yeshua's words. Why? Because we aren't taking Matthew 24:36 out of context anymore. We're putting it with the verse it belongs to, and it creates perfect harmony with Yeshua's words in Revelation. I don't want to repeat a teaching we've already made. So, if you're interested in understanding why we can know the day of Yeshua's return, the day, not the hour, please see our written teaching simply titled, Knowing the Day. You'll see we can know the day as it approaches. We just won't know the hour. Verse 37 begins a new topic. It's a standalone statement. In fact, it's a contrasting statement from the one before it. The previous statement shows how no one can know the day heaven and earth will pass away. But then he makes the statement that likens his return to the days of Noah. Now, there's little doubt that verses 38 and 39 are simply giving a reference to how life will be going on as usual when Yeshua returns, just as it was in Noah's day. That's because the people were in spiritual darkness. But Noah, the faithful follower, knew. Then we see the next two verses, verses 40 and 41. The verses about two men working in the field and the two women grinding at the mill. Remember, Yeshua just likened his return to the days of Noah, and we see Yeshua giving a hint to confirm that timing. We know the time of the flood was just after Second Passover. According to the Septuagint, it was 2 weeks after Second Passover, which places it rather close to Shavuot, which is in the third month. Now, why is that significant? The wheat harvest normally begins in late May and early June, which is also the average times of Second Passover and Shavuot. So, why are these men in the field? Why are these women at the wheel when Yeshua returns? Because Yeshua is confirming it's the time of Noah. As I noted in our teaching on Shavuot, the Torah commands an offering of 2 loaves made with new grain at Shavuot, as shown here in Leviticus 23. It's the new grain of wheat harvest. This is different from the offering of first fruits. On the first day of the Feast of Weeks, an offering of grain is to be made. So the first is just a grain offering. However, Shavuot is 2 loaves of bread made of new grain. These 2 loaves could easily represent the tablets the Torah was written on by Yahweh for the covenant made on Shavuot, thus pointing to how man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from Yahweh. They can also represent the 2 sticks of Israel coming back together under Yeshua, as prophesied here by Ezekiel in chapter 37, verses 15 through 17. Ironically, This prophecy in Ezekiel comes immediately after the prophecy of the resurrection in Ezekiel 37. So the men are in the fields, getting the first fruits of new grain from the wheat harvest, and the women are grinding it to make the bread, most likely for Shavuot. This isn't some happenstance of a reference. Yeshua is discussing the harvest time that syncs perfectly with the timing of the flood and Shavuot. Men aren't always in the field. They're in the field to either plant or reap. The mere fact the women are at the mill gives a hint for it being harvest regarding the 2 loaves. When looking into everything again regarding Noah, I started thinking it's very possible we could see a 7-day warning to everything starting with Yeshua's return, just as Noah had a 7-day warning. And that's only if there's a warning at all. But why would it be possible to see a warning? Well, if the flood came on the 27th day of the 2nd month, as given in the Septuagint, then Noah's warning most likely came on the 20th day of that 2nd month, 7 days before. So the 20th day of the 2nd month could be significant. We know Yahweh does things in patterns throughout the Scriptures. Knowing that, is the 20th day of the 2nd month significant elsewhere? Actually, yes. Consider how the children of Israel left Mount Sinai on the 20th day of the 2nd month. Please notice, this was the first time they set out under Moses' command since the Exodus. The plausible parallel here is how Yeshua is the prophet likened unto Moses. So, could the 20th day of the 2nd month be when the bride is given a warning to set out to meet Yeshua, like the call went out to the 10 virgins noted in Matthew 25? The 20th day would be a 7-day warning like with Noah. The times and patterns do line up. Now consider this parallel. Moses was with his people but not respected by them. He left. Then he returned to save them 40 years later. Likewise, Yeshua was with his people but not respected by them. He left. He will return like Moses 40 jubilees later to save his people. The prophet likened unto Moses. There's much more to that, but that'll be covered in a different teaching. So the 20th day of the 2nd month, as seen with Noah and with Moses, can easily have some credibility for something to do with Yeshua's return. Thus, the 20th day of the 2nd month could be the wake-up call to the 10 virgins. But it wouldn't be to the rest of the world. Remember, only Noah knew 7 days beforehand. The world didn't know even up to the moment it all happened. Speaking of a wake-up event and the 10 virgins, could the parable of the 10 virgins be pointing us to a 10-day time frame from the day of the wake-up event to the day of his coming? Yeshua discusses the 10 virgins in the opening of Matthew 25. He discusses the days of Noah near the end of chapter 24. In fact, notice the opening verse to the parable of the 10 virgins. It starts by saying, "at that time." Thus, it's keeping in context to the appearing of Yeshua as noted from chapter 24, verses 38 through 51. Verses 38 and 39 show the focus is on the time before the flood and up to the day it happened. Noah entered the ark 7 days before the flood came, as seen here in Genesis chapter 7. Now, an argument could be made that the 7 days before was when Noah just started loading the animals. That's very possible. It could also be that he entered the ark that day and the animals came to him. Either way, the text implies that Noah at least began the process of entering the ark 7 days before the flood, and he knew the flood was coming those 7 days before it came. I know the general view is that Noah was working on the ark all the way up to the day he and his family entered it. But nothing in the text shows that to be the case. In reality, the ark could have been completed weeks or even months before Yahweh told him to enter it. So, when Yahweh told him to start entering 7 days beforehand, it was basically Noah's wake-up call, saying, okay, it's time. And this is the event Yeshua was referring to at the start of the parable of the 10 virgins, the time before the flood. So the parable of the 10 virgins is referencing the time of that 7-day warning. He's likening the wake-up event the 10 virgins had to the wake-up event Noah had, the alarm that the awaited event was coming. Think of it. Noah entered the ark with the door being shut 7 days later. We see the same terminology with the 10 virgins as well. We see all 10 are called to go out and meet Yeshua. Then the time comes when the door is shut, just like with Noah. With Yeshua just referencing Noah right before this parable, it can't be a coincidence how the terminology parallels. Thus, the days before the flood to the day the door was shut point to the days before his coming to the day the door is shut for the 5 wise virgins. But this is where I'm wondering if the days are going to be cyclical, but may not be identical. In my current understanding of the scriptures, I see Yeshua coming down in the clouds. He'll come down in the New Jerusalem, though it doesn't touch down until after the millennium. I see the world saying it's an alien invasion, and this is covered in our teaching, The Coming Alien Invasion and Bible Prophecy. It seems this would likely be the revealing of Yeshua he references here in Luke 17, verses 30 and 31. Yeshua says when we see him, there's action required on our part. This is paralleled with the parable of the 10 virgins. They hear the cry and are told to go out to meet him. When they go out to meet him, the door is shut behind them. Could they, as with Noah, be called out on the 20th day of the 2nd month? Then, on the 27th day of the month, they're protected from world events until the resurrection 10 days later on Shavuot, Pentecost. 10 days where the bride is supernaturally protected here on earth, possibly being the same 10 days noted where certain believers in the church of Smyrna would suffer as noted here in Revelation chapter 2. So, here are 10 days that could overlap. 10 days in waiting to be taken to a wedding, and 10 days of being tested. Ironically enough, we see 10 days mentioned in the scriptures for similar events. In Genesis 24, we see Rebekah's family trying to have her stay for 10 days before going off to be married. Now, whether this amount of time was a common practice or not, I find it interesting that it's brought up in the scriptures as a time to wait before going off to be married. A time we're seeing as a possibility with the 5 virgins waiting to be taken for the wedding with Yeshua, the Son of Yahweh. As far as these days possibly overlapping with 10 days for Smyrna, we see a similar time of testing in the book of Daniel, the time when Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah are tested. They were tested for 10 days. So, it seems there could be something to these 10 days. The judgment started at the time of the flood. The judgment didn't start with the warning. So, at the warning, all could seem okay all around us. But it won't be okay all around us in 7 days. Thus, the importance to heed the warning. Exactly what the warning will be, if there's a warning at all. Whatever it's going to look like, I really don't know. This is something we need to keep in prayer. And again, that's only if we see a warning. However, since the warning was only given to Noah, it seems likely it wouldn't be something obvious to the world around us. But that's only a speculation. Whether there's a warning or not, Yeshua gives instructions for the day of his revealing. Luke 17:30. It will be just like this on the day the Son of Man is revealed. On that day, no one who is on the roof of his house with goods inside should go down to get them. Likewise, no one in the field should go back for anything. According to these verses in Luke, just like with the 10 virgins, we see there will be action required on our part when Yeshua appears. But not just action, immediate action. Though I believe in what many call a pre-trib resurrection or pre-trib rapture for the Church of Philadelphia, I don't believe that event happens out of nowhere. It's precluded by those believers going out to meet Yeshua. This is covered in our teaching, The Hour of Trial. It will be just like Noah was warned and had to do something. It will be just like Lot was warned and had to do something. It will be just like the 10 virgins were told and had to do something. Noah had a 7-day warning. Lot was warned the day of and had to flee immediately. So, could they be representing the 5 wise and the 5 foolish? I don't know. Ironically enough, Yeshua references both of these men in the verses preceding Luke 17:30. So could it be that Noah represents the wise virgins who heed the warning, and then Lot represent the foolish who don't? I don't know. That's total speculation. But in each case, with Noah, Lot, and the 10 virgins, the world wasn't warned. Only the faithful believers were. And we see that only the wise were the ones who went out first. So, in keeping with the days of Noah, as Yeshua referenced, a possible warning could come on the 20th day of the 2nd month, the same day Moses started leading the people from Mount Sinai. Then, 7 days later, on the 27th, Yeshua is revealed in the clouds. Then you will either be sealed in the wilderness, waiting for the resurrection, or stuck in the middle of the chaos. What many don't know is that Yeshua ascended into heaven in front of his disciples on the 27th day of the 2nd month. That's right, the very day of the flood, the 27th day of the 2nd month. The scriptures tell us Yeshua appeared to his disciples for 40 days after his resurrection, and then he ascended into heaven. So, he died on the 14th of the 1st month. He rose at the end of the 17th. So from the 18th day of the 1st month to the 17th day of the 2nd month, we have 30 days. Then add 10 days to that, and we come to the 27th day of the 2nd month, the day he ascended into heaven, the same day of the flood. It's the exact same day. In the same text, the angel said he would return in like manner. That was said on the 27th day of the 2nd month. Is there something more to this? Will this also be the day Yeshua resumes his ministry on earth? After all, he likened his return to the flood, and it just so happens, by coincidence I'm sure, to be the same day as he ascended into heaven. Plus, let's not forget, it was the same day Noah came out of the ark as well. So, could this be the day Yeshua does indeed return, just like Noah came out of the ark on the same day? Now, knowing Yeshua ascended into heaven on the 27th day of the 2nd month, the day of the flood, and the day Noah came out of the ark on the same day, let's read some verses together. Revelation chapter 5, starting in verse 2. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, "Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll?" But no one in heaven, or on earth, or under the earth could open the scroll, or even look inside it. I wept and wept because no one was found who was worthy to open the scroll or look inside. Then one of the elders said to me, "Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals." Then I saw a lamb, looking as if it had been slain, standing in the center of the throne, encircled by the 4 living creatures and the elders. He had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. So at first it says, no one in heaven, on earth, or under the earth could open the scroll. But then suddenly we see Yeshua is there. So, where was he just moments before he was suddenly seen in heaven? He obviously wasn't in heaven, on earth, or under the earth, that being Sheol, as no one in those places were worthy to open the scroll, the 3 places where men are. So, again, where was he? If he wasn't in one of these places, there's only one other place he could be. He was on his way to heaven, between heaven and earth. It was at this instance John the Revelator was seeing the past on the day Yeshua ascended into heaven, as given in Acts chapter 1. The day he ascended into heaven before the disciples. And the verses even say he looked as if he had been slain. John the Revelator was taken back in time to the 27th day of the 2nd month after Yeshua's death and resurrection. We then see Yeshua begin to open the seals in Revelation. Thus, the day the seals are broken are on the 27th day of the 2nd month, the day of the flood. Did you hear that? The day the seals are broken are on the 27th day of the 2nd month, the day of the flood. Now, to be clear, this is when the seals are broken. It's not the time of the resurrection, but it will be a time of protection just the same. It will most likely be the day Yeshua comes down in the clouds and all pandemonium begins on the earth. And it could very easily be the time when believers are protected from the creatures out of the abyss, as seen here in Revelation 9. It says they can't harm those who have the seal of Yahweh on them. The seal is placed on these people just before the 6th seal is broken. Then, it's at the time of the 6th seal that we see the great earthquake of Isaiah 24, the time of the resurrection. Please see our teaching, Birth Pains, for more on that. The 6th seal is when the whole moon turns red. Now, does it turn red as a result of it all? Or is it a sign that it's coming? If it's a sign that it's coming, then there will need to be at least one other sign eventually, or even 2 others. As the scripture says, every matter is to be established with 2 or 3 witnesses. Ironically, Yahweh provided 3 witnesses in heaven for his appointed times. So, you can't use just one of these witnesses to establish a matter for what they're made for. You have to have at least 2 to establish a matter. Let me say that again. You can't use just one of these witnesses to establish a matter for what they were made for. You have to have at least 2 to establish a matter. So the judgment of the seals begin the same day the judgment of the flood began. The day Yeshua is taken into heaven on the 27th day of the 2nd month. That will be the day the seals begin to be broken, the 27th day of the 2nd month. Time in heaven is irrelevant. We see where 1,000 years is likened to a day, and a day is likened to 1,000 years. Again, showing time is irrelevant in heaven. Thus, the day he returns in the clouds will seem like the day he left in the clouds to him. The seals will be broken on that day in the future. We're seeing a parallel with Noah coming out of the ark on the same day he was taken in it. In fact, you can't help but wonder if there's more to the statement the angels said to the disciples regarding his return on the day he ascended into heaven. Yes, it's talking about the manner in which he is taken. I get it. But with knowing what we know now, you can't help but wonder if there's more to that statement in Acts chapter 1, verse 11. So, will this be a case of Matthew 6:10 regarding the day of the seals being broken? Where Matthew 6:10 says, "Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Could everything that was seen in heaven through the book of Revelation start when Yeshua comes back down on that same day he went up? The same day that Noah went into and came out of the ark? So, the judgment of the seals may very well start on the 27th day of the second month. Now, I know there are many different views about the seals, and I don't have time to go into that in this teaching. However, I confess that I struggle with hearing the rider on the white horse has to be the Antichrist. If one is going to personify the rider on the white horse, it seems to me that they have to personify the other riders just the same. We'll cover all that in a different teaching another time. The question then comes back around. If this is the case, will there be a warning like Noah was given? Whether there's a warning or not, I'm starting to see a huge significance to the 27th day of the second month. Another interesting parallel to this timing is seen in the Exodus out of Egypt. In Exodus chapter 16, verse 1, we see the Israelites reach the desert of Sin on the 15th day of the second month. That's second Passover timing. Then they came to Mount Sinai on the first day of the third month. Now, in the midst of these 15 days, from the 15th day of the second month to the first day of the third, we see the following. We see manna start falling from heaven, the 15th day of the second month. They moved and camped at Rephidim. Moses struck the rock for water at Rephidim. The Amalekites attacked them at Rephidim. Joshua fought and won while Moses' hands were lifted. And Jethro visits and Moses sets up judges over the people. All that happens between second Passover and the day they arrived at Mount Sinai. After that, they prepared for the covenant on Shavuot, Pentecost. So, Yahweh starts providing. They're attacked by the enemy. They're delivered. Then Yahweh sets up judges. This could easily parallel what happens in the end times. Yeshua appears, and the bride goes out to meet him. He provides for them. The enemy attacks. Philadelphia is taken. Then the 144,000, the men from Philadelphia, are set up as judges to rule for the millennium. Then, after all that, the resurrection takes place on Shavuot, the day of the wedding, the new covenant. Again, all this took place between second Passover and the day they arrived at Mount Sinai for the covenant. Knowing he makes known the end from the beginning, and from ancient times what is still to come, it makes sense this could be a similar pattern and time frame for the coming out of spiritual Babylon. First, it was coming out of Egypt. Now, it's when we come out of Babylon. Let's not forget about King Hezekiah in 2 Chronicles chapter 30. He's the only king who tried to unite the northern and southern kingdoms of Israel, a trait of Yeshua. In that effort, Hezekiah invited the northern kingdom down for second Passover. Those who came rejoiced so much in it that they celebrated it for an extra week. Now, what's the significance? The added week would take them to the 28th day of the second month. So they celebrated the last holy day of the feast together on the 28th day. Now, under Moses, they left for the first time on the 20th day of the second month. That would be the 6th day of second unleavened bread. Under Hezekiah, they celebrated second unleavened bread for 2 weeks. That would put the 27th day of the month at the 6th day of the second week of that celebration. And remember, Hezekiah was trying to bring unity to the two kingdoms, just like Yeshua will do. So, could there be a connection here? Knowing that Yeshua ascended on the 27th day of the second month, could that be the day he resumes his ministry on earth? But why would second Passover be significant to Yeshua? Remember, he himself said he came for the lost sheep of Israel, namely the northern kingdom, who is also referenced as Ephraim in the prophets. And it was Ephraim who is prophesied to become a multitude of nations in the world from Jacob himself. Ephraim, the northern kingdom, never came back after being banished to Syria. Judah returned from Babylon, but not so the case with Ephraim. Ephraim left the one nation of Israel and became a multitude of nations in the world. Ephraim is the prodigal son who's now returning home. When Hezekiah celebrated second Passover and unleavened bread to unite the two kingdoms back together, only a handful of people came, but the call went out to all of them. Because Yeshua came for the lost sheep, the northern kingdom, he has sent out his call to all just the same. And I believe it's quite possible that just as Moses started leading the people out on what was the 6th day of the second unleavened bread, Yeshua, the prophet likened unto Moses, may do the same in the second week of that celebration like Hezekiah, the 27th day of the second month. Another interesting parallel to the timing of this taking place in the second month is found in Ezra chapter 3. This is where we see the rebuilding of the temple after their captivity in Babylon. Please notice how the restoration takes place in the second month. So, just as things started in the second month then, Yeshua will do the same in the end, in the second month. As you can see, the second month has significance. This is especially so with the last half, and most specifically, the 27th day of that month. Within this time frame, we see Noah entered the ark, and the flood started. The land was dry, and Noah exited the ark. The possible time Joshua defeats the Amalekites. Hezekiah extended second Passover and unleavened bread. It's the same time frame of the rebuilding in Ezra. Yeshua ascends to heaven. The seals are broken in heaven. Do we just ignore these as coincidence? I struggle thinking that, especially since Yeshua likens his return to the days of Noah and knowing he ascended on that very day. How can we not compare all of this to Isaiah 46:10 and at least consider the possibilities? This will be a time my family and I will be annually watching. That's for sure. The time leading up to and including Shavuot, also known as Pentecost. The day he opens the door to the wise virgins to go into the wedding banquet. Interestingly enough, we see the same thing in Revelation 19. The bride getting ready for the wedding, putting on the wedding clothes. The day they literally put on their wedding clothes. They prepared themselves spiritually, Now, he prepares them physically. And as much as I believe will be taken to Mount Sinai with Yeshua, it seems the scriptures imply the actual act of the new marriage covenant first takes place at the heavenly Mount Sinai, as seen here in Hebrews chapter 12. For what it's worth, the word have doesn't exist in the Greek for these verses, and the word come actually means to come to. So the Greek actually puts these verses in future tense and not past tense. Because we believe it's very possible Yeshua will take his bride to Mount Sinai after the wedding, many have asked, how can you say that Yeshua is coming here on earth to be with his bride for 1 year? That would mean that he is actually in the wilderness with those taken to the place prepared. How can this be when Yeshua himself said he wouldn't be there? You see, Yeshua is saying here in Matthew 24, 26 through 28 that he won't be there. No, actually, he's saying not to believe where they're saying. When the dust settles, many will claim to know where he is. But there is no need to go. Those who are there will be all who are let in. In other words, the 5 foolish virgins won't be let in. And those who try to sneak in won't have the wedding clothes that the others were given. Thus, they will be kicked out, as seen here in Matthew 22. A question I often get is, Steve, don't you believe in the greater Exodus? Yes, absolutely. Please see our teaching simply titled The Second Exodus. This teaching will explain its timing, how it will take place, and who will participate in it. In closing, Noah and the ark are an awesome example of the new covenant. How? Consider how Hosea 2 says the new covenant includes the beasts of the field and the birds of the air and the creatures that move along the ground. Then, in Acts 10 and 11, we see Peter being shown how the wild animals represent the Gentiles, those of the 10 tribes who were scattered throughout the nations being brought back into covenant, showing how Hosea chapter 2 would come to pass. That vision wasn't about food. It was all about the Gentiles being brought back into covenant. Please see our teaching, Acts 10, to eat or not to eat. The vision was all about the prodigal son, the northern kingdom, who assimilated into the nations, as prophesied by Jacob himself, was returning. It wasn't about food. Thus, Yeshua fulfilling the promise made to Abraham. Please see our teaching, The Eternal Covenant, for more on that. So, just as we see Noah bringing in the wild animals on the ark, we see Yeshua bringing in the wild animals, the Gentiles, into covenant. Thus, the new covenant is tied to the days of Noah. It's simply another reason why Yeshua likened his return to the days of Noah. So, it only makes sense for us to watch the times of Noah all the more. A time we should pray what Yeshua told us to in Luke 21:36. It's not just about escaping the tribulation. It's about standing before the Son of Man. Yeshua, that's marriage language, to stand before him. Remember, that's what Shavuot is. It's the day of the marriage covenant. It's also the 50th day, the last day of the counting. Thus, Yeshua's words about being raised on the last day in John. Ironically, though the first day of the Feast of Weeks is traditionally called First Fruits, biblically speaking, we see the day of Shavuot is actually given the title of First Fruits here in Numbers 28, verse 26. The context shows this is the day of Shavuot. So, could this be why the 144,000 are considered first fruits in Revelation 14, verses 3 and 4? And so believers will gather out to meet him and wait for the door to be opened on the day of Shavuot. This is a view I can easily see transpiring. There really are several ways this could all play out, but I believe there's little doubt this is a time we should all be watching every year from here on out. Well, that's all I have. If you have found any part of this teaching to be intriguing, I ask that you please copy the link and email it to friends. Who knows? It may help spark new thoughts for others as we all seek understanding along the way. Regarding all that's been said here, as always, think about it, pray about it, but more than anything, be a doer of the word and not a hearer only. Until next time, Shalom.